So, just thoughts about some games I tried in 2025 made by small teams, I guess. Note that there will be spoilers for pretty much any game is mentioned. I'll just get right at it, with the first one being Celeste. This is about Madeline, who seeks to climb the top of Celeste Mountain. The way I would briefly describe it is that it's an extremely okay game, good actually, where you climb a mountain while everything wants to kill you for some reason. Except Theo, he's a nice guy. It is challenging, but it's got a point. The game consists of continuous single-screen platforming challenges. Any fails, which there will be plenty of, will just send you to the start of that screen and you can try again. Movement is mainly aided with a dash ability, so that's cool. The game deals with mental health as Madeline goes on this dangerous journey to deal with depression and anxiety. All of that is very real, by the way. The antagonist is a manifestation of all the negative traits of Madeline, called part of her in-game, but also referred to as Madeline by the community. Guess the mountain has a few tricks up its sleeve, huh? Madeline is worried and doubtful of Madeline, ending up bringing her down, holding her back and creating conflict. Oh my gosh, can you stay in the text box, please? You can count on Theo to be there for support and to have a nice conversation, leading to some of the more comforting moments in the game. Oh, just imagine someone being there for you by your side. At one point, during an emergency, Theo suggests Madeline, and by extension the player, to breathe along to an imaginary feather, slowly floating up and down. Isn't controlled breathing an actually valid way to calm down a little? Like, there are all those breathing exercises passed around, and it was proposed to me by the school staff back in the day. Just breathe in, breathe out. It's going to be okay. It might feel easier for one to avoid issues about themselves, brush them off, but in the end, these are still a part of the person and cannot be just ignored. Only by accepting her, in quotes, evil counterpart and not working against it does Madeline gather the strength to climb to the peak. Since she joins her reflection, takes it with her, is that signifying self-acceptance. It's not easy dealing with insecurities, I can confirm. Haven't really played it much in some time. I have completed like the main 7 chapters, peeked into the B-side, and I just unlocked the bonus 8th chapter. Chapter 5 was the worst, it's pure nightmare fuel. At first it's just really dark. Okay, hard to see what's there and where to go, but anyway. And then arrives the second half of it. There are waving tongues on the ground as hazards and these flying squids that home in on you and you can't really get rid of. They even got some surprise attacks on me when I was moving quickly. What really doesn't help is that for the last stretch, your movement is severely limited. What a relief it was when I finished it. I might need a moment to breathe after that. The chapters right before and after it, 4 and 6, were the most pleasant ones for the vibrant visuals and atmosphere. Even though they had something going on, it must have not felt as much like a hurdle as some other moments. There were places that took me a bit to figure out what I'm supposed to do, and interestingly, the one place I didn't figure out myself was a corridor in chapter 4, because I didn't realize you can just grab onto the moving platform from the side. After getting through what the base chapters had to offer and reaching the peak, finishing the objective and the adventure, it all felt so rewarding by itself. Apart from being at the peak and getting an awesome view, the ending didn't feel very crazy. Madeline comes down and has cake with everyone she met on the journey. At this point, just simply reaching the peak felt fulfilling. There seemed to be some nods to gaming. The room for the hidden crystal heart in the 4th chapter apparently had a Super Mario Bros. 3 reference. I did not get that, I did not know what to do there myself. But it was fun to figure out getting the heart in the 1st chapter myself, taking notes and such. When I started writing this video, I discovered a hidden room where you can play Celeste in a retro console style, which is how it was at first, right? But wait, would Madeline be playing a game about herself then? I shouldn't think of that very much. The WereCleaner is a free 2024 game made by students at the University of Southern California. oh hey, should we have some kind of game project at our university soon? I found out about this game when a YouTube video about it popped up in my recommended. Anyway, this follows Kyle, a janitor at a toy manufacturing, doing his job. He and other workers are suddenly forced to work night shifts. Kyle, however, is actually a werewolf and turns into this form at night. He really needs to be there at work to be able to pay rent, but also can't be seen in this werewolf form. So he has to do this work really carefully in secret. When others notice him and get alerted, he can't help but instinctively go eat them. Yeah! Each night has a number of messes and the office has to be clean in order to complete the level. The messes also get increasingly ridiculous, like there is some drunk guy crashing out and a satanic ritual. Each kill only adds to the messes and you also have to get rid of any workers who are alarmed by either you or a dead co-worker, so you better avoid contact with others. Each level has a time limit, after which it's a fail, and each kill makes it significantly harder to finish in time. Additional marks are given for no kills and for finishing the level faster. It is a stealth game where you are in control, others are powerless against you apart from wasting time. Only the final night is a bit dangerous, where your friend, the security guard, is actively after you. That way it is more relaxing than the other entries here, where you can play it through in a weekend. I haven't 100%ed it yet, which would involve all the fastest times, but I got all the other achievements in 4 hours. The cutscene artwork is kind of cute though, and I like how the team behind it has also published some animated shorts exploring the plot and aftermath of the game. How do I turn the analysis into something deep and dramatic? Kyle might look just like an average person, but inside he hides a dark secret. When the moon rises, he turns into a werewolf with a lust for blood he has no power against. It's in his nature. It's when he is called in for overtime work at night that puts him in an especially tough spot. If he goes to work, he puts himself and all of his co-workers in danger due to his instincts. If he declines, he wouldn't get paid, which means he would be unable to pay rent and would get kicked out of home, likely endangering people on the streets. That leaves him no choice but to do his job as expected. The walls of his home will not protect other people from him now. If he gets seen at work, Kyle will panic and instinctively attack the person next to him. While this doesn't seem like much, as Kyle as a janitor can just clean up the remains, it still takes time, during which he could be seen by more people. Problems also arise when the dead bodies get discovered and reported by co-workers. Mind you, the victim of every Kyle attack is an innocent worker whose life was cut short. Daryl, the security guard, makes it his mission to catch the creature lurking in the offices, to the point that he fails to notice the growing unease there as a result of the workplace treatment. Riots and extremism flourish. After getting so close to catching Kyle, an accident occurs. The rope snaps high above the ground. Daryl doesn't make it. By hyper-focusing on one specific issue, he forgot about the job he was actually supposed to be doing, keeping order, and ultimately his obsession led to his demise. The issue at hand here is of expectations, of always being expected to do the job perfectly, no matter the conditions. Even while being an actual danger, Kyle has to conform and silently do everything he's told, not to face the consequences. He even has to lie to his good friend Daryl, the security guard, making everything worse in the end. Kyle, clearly shaken by what unfolded over the week, gets just enough to pay rent and get by. Maybe there was something else intelligent to say, but it's been half a year. OneShot is another game I found when it was mentioned on YouTube, actually, so this is a game you might just see on someone's profile picture on YouTube or Discord. One thing is that it's not very easy to talk about it without spoiling. Let's check Linux compatibility. The wallpaper doesn't change. Wait, that's a thing? Was it supposed to be a surprise that it does that? If you check the Wikipedia page, One of the first things written there is that it breaks the fourth wall repeatedly. You know how sometimes in games, just like in movies, the characters acknowledge the player or reference it being a game in some way. That's breaking the fourth wall. OneShot absolutely shatters it. Throw it out the window. The main character here is Nico, a young cat person who wakes up on a strange land that has seen better days. The way to save the world and to return home is allegedly to bring a light bulb known as the sun to the top of a tower. Progress is mostly made by finding items around the area and combining them, and by cracking the occasional code. What makes a game special, apart from maybe the characters and the environment, is the puzzle solving and especially the interaction between the game and the player. Nico and a few other important characters acknowledge your presence, with Nico frequently asking for your assistance or just striking up a conversation. To them, you are being somewhere up there, a god. The player is also directly approached by an entity in the computer terminals, giving guidance and hints to puzzles. And remember, you only have one shot. Hey, that's like the title of the game or something. The characters also call you by your computer username. So, you have a situation where the main character is put against their will on an adventure to rescue some land, being the only one out there who can bring change. And yet there is a growing concern that maybe there is not all that much left to save. Some puzzles in the game require you to take a look away from the game and find solutions on your operating system. Maybe a text file with instructions was written into your documents folder. The game changes your wallpaper a few times. Or maybe you have to manipulate the game window to uncover something. The game is made with RPG Maker, but this is no standard RPG. There are no RPG style fights and some interesting functionality is used instead, as you can see. I mentioned taking notes that would be useful in OneShot. As you might notice, I am using Linux, and OneShot doesn't work all that well on that. Getting it to run natively is complicated. Running it from under a Proton environment, some of the tricks of the game lose their effectiveness. The files it creates for you to see are very deep down numerous folders instead of being right in your documents. Wallpaper changes and such image displaying does not work, leaving players confused and prompting them to search the game files or the web for answers. Near the actual end, there is another program you need to have running alongside the main game, and they need to detect each other. While this is cool, yeah, I didn't get that in Linux, and it's tough to get it working like that. So my first playthrough ended right there. If you play the main game, I'd really suggest playing it on Windows. However, there is another edition of it available with a simulated OS, supporting multiple platforms. The title of the game signifies that according to the plot, you're only supposed to play through it once, with a big decision that has to be made at the end, sealing the fate of Nico and the world. There will be a way to restart though. I read that originally the one-shot mechanic was enforced stronger, as closing the game outside save points was an instant game over in the worst way, and you really needed some technical knowledge to be able to restart the run. After playing through it once, you can go on an alternate path known as the Solstice route with an entirely different plot. New characters, new parts of the areas, new puzzles leading to the best ending. The trigger to that route is a little hard to find, but then it's locked in and is rather straightforward from there. So in one shot, the world is crumbling and the entity is actively tearing it down, creating these glitches. This happens a lot more in Solstice, and it's a much bigger problem there. While it is going to result in the true ending, can we talk about just how brutal the way there is? Nico gets exposed to how this is just a game. They are in a simulation and all characters are simulated. There are some program assets. Did I mention anything about the fourth wall? It's a lot of info suddenly, all at once. Imagine going up to the child and being like, "You are living in a simulation. This world is fake. All your friends are fake. You are living a lie for the second time in a row and your idol keeps bringing you back here." Not only did I get yelled at by the game near the end of the normal route, but now Nico is turning against me. And because of the game world breaking apart, basically anyone who ends up helping Nico ends up dying. Poor kid must be shocked. Though towards the end of the route, there is this cool moment where in order to get closer to the game and the entity, you have to go into the game files and move character files around between folders. After which, Nico goes to talk the entity out of it, comfort it. Nico is reunited with friends for the last time and gets to both set the sun down to recover the world and go home. When you let Nico go, there is this additional effect where Nico steps out of the game window and walks across your desktop. This is a moment that got me like, whoa, hey, what are you doing? When playing it through and having these conversations with Nico, I thought that hey, we're just alike, we both are human-like, have a blue sky with a big sun shining up there, wheat fields growing in the countryside, love pancakes and have people being on the computer all day. But some people stay up and use computers. Yes! One thing I didn't relate to was fear of the dark. I'm rather of the kind that needs total darkness and silence to comfortably fall asleep. But still, Nico apparently is not actually human, most notable for the big yellow eyes and not knowing the Earth is a planet. The cutscenes, whether hand-drawn or pixel art, were the most beautiful parts of the game. The soundtrack that stood out to me the most is Geothermal, which plays at the part of the first area that's blocked off by toxic fumes. Interestingly, in this case, the music suddenly turns extra soothing when navigating a dangerous environment, but it's not the only time I've run into something like this. From now until the end of the OneShot chapter, there will be comparisons with other games, so likely more spoilers. At the end of the normal route, you must decide whether to send Nico home, sacrificing the world, or save the world, keeping Nico in it. It's one or the other. A while ago, I was pretty interested in the Desolate Hope, an earlier game by the creator of FNAF. There, sentient robots are running simulations for creating areas habitable for humans away from Earth. In the end, the simulations get broken down and shut off, along with all the robots, and all the available energy gets concentrated to one place, just so this one actual human being around there could live a life long enough. When the time came to make a decision in OneShot, I made a similar sacrifice influenced by TDH. While it felt right for me, the other ending scene maybe looks a little brighter. The game uses your real name and writes files to your home directory, but it's actually not my first time seeing that. For example, DDLC does that along with an amateur horror game I noticed like a year ago. The first of which shares the connection between the characters and player and the idea of it being just a game. As I have some experience with programming and game engines, I have a good idea for how some of the tricks are done. For example, the username can be gotten using OS environment variables. But how the wallpaper was changed, I don't know. Some parallels I saw with Undertale has to do with the story progression of the idea that the actions taken by the player impact the story and that endings leave a permanent mark. The first time I restarted Undertale and saw characters having deja vu moments, I was freaking out a little. When all is well, the player is urged to leave and not return, so the characters could be in peace. But the first time it happens in OneShot, it is forced and not really truthful. And there is a thing with run resets and acknowledging the player. OneShot is impressive in a technical way for the tricks it does with the operating system and exploring the relationship between the player and the characters deeper. While what I'm going to talk about might be bigger, more polished and well crafted, OneShot might be the game I prefer for those reasons. And being ridiculously hard might not be exactly what I'm looking for, but well, here we are. Hollow Knight was a bit difficult to get into at first. How my playthrough started was that I reached the hub, very nice, I dropped down and went to the left. There was a larger enemy that was impossible to beat at that point, so I die. I go to the right, and there's a larger enemy that's hard to beat, and I didn't even really get much from it when I eventually did it. So where do I go? After fighting another bench, eventually I was like, yes, progress! Obtaining a map helps out a lot. There was this room with giant worms seemingly popping out everywhere. Now when I got a little more used to them, I can see the room is not that bad, but it gave me a frightening the first time. After going around the crossroads for a bit, I entered Green Path. Ah, it's so green and pretty here. I then got suddenly eaten up by something hiding in the ground. Based on these first interactions, Golems and Fool Eaters are like the scariest early game enemies. First time I got jumped on by a head crab in Half-Life, I was terrified of them for a while. The game is hard, with the difficulty mainly coming from the boss fights and enemy gauntlets. You might just be walking peacefully and suddenly BAM! The gates close, you're locked into a boss battle. Good luck! Many bosses took me a couple tries to defeat. I remember Soul Master in particular for being annoying to beat among the earlier bosses. Well, yes, I did feel the urge to look up help about the boss fight after a few failed attempts at it, but at some point it wasn't as helpful anymore and could easily spoil details surrounding the fight. Concerning Celeste and the Hollow Knight games, the difficulty is hard, but I feel like it's mostly justified. You enter a battle being like, oh my gosh, how do I get through this? Then practice, learn the flow of it, and eventually it is possible, and one of these attempts is gonna be it. You know what my favorite voice line is in the game? You know it? This is an open world game, there aren't really separate levels, just that some parts are inaccessible until obtaining some abilities or items, just like some bosses are significantly harder before that. That's interesting, it's almost like there's a whole genre like that. Now I know what a Metroidvania is. As I progressed, I got more movement options, it became more fun that way, with dash and double jump feeling like the biggest game changers. In combat I went for nail damage with maybe some vengeful spirits, shade souls. There are some nail arts I obtained but never learned to use. In the later stages, managing charms apparently became a bit important. What was my strat even? My biggest regret in the game is banishing the Grim Troop before upgrading all my fragile charms. The game is pretty hard and it seemed rather large scale. Being used to games ending in like 8 hours, I joked to myself that it's going to take me 50 hours to reach any kind of conclusion. Well, I reached the first ending in less than 30 hours and the true ending in about 40 hours. And I can tell you, I wasn't feeling like starting a new save and having to go through all these battles on low gear again immediately after. I've noticed some of the brief recaps on Hollow Knight lore, so I'll give one shot at it. This is Hollow Knight in under a minute. An ancient moth known as the Radiance loses all her followers to the Pale King, who aims to create a civilization of intelligent bugs. To get back at him, Radiance infects all the bugs. The Pale King makes out with a white lady, that's her aim, I'm not being racist, to create a hollow vessel to contain the infection. The Hollow Knight is your big brother, he got a job. You and thousands of other babies are abandoned in a dumpster. But the infection still starts leaking and you gotta fix it now. Finish the 3 dreamers guarding the Hollow Knight. Either get into a fight with your brother and suck up the infection, or get inside him to take on the infection itself. If only Daddy was still around to see you. The lore comes bit by bit from dialogue and tablets, but don't expect me to piece it together by myself. The graphics are pretty impressive though. Each area has its unique style, looking fresh and different, with lots of minor enemies. Well, maybe there is plenty of overlap between Green Path and Queen's Gardens, also sharing the spaghetti plants, but okay. There are enemies I'm not very fond of. Mentioned a few of them already, but for example, there are all those disgusting dudes who also block the way to God home. Primal Aspid and Crystal Hunter, infamous for being dangerous and hard to avoid. These big beasts turning into a drill and zooming in on you. Furious Range Spy for being really loud. What the f is that? I fell into Deep Test relatively late, so I was more prepared to handle it, but it wasn't a particularly pleasant experience. What bugged me first was the horrible sound design. You had the occasional frantic screams and the insect crawling sounds in your headphones. And also this. Something I wondered a bit is which is harder, Hollow Knight or Cuphead? The consensus seems to be that it's Cuphead, at least when considering the base games. But what I feel like helps put Hollow Knight into question is that there's much more exploration and navigation between attempts at boss fights, with some bosses having rather nasty runbacks, and there's much more content. But it's been a while since I played Cuphead and I completed it in a couple hours. Meanwhile, yeah. But there are the pantheons in Hollow Knight, and that's the especially hard part. There were some bugs I ran into in the Linux release of Hollow Knight. Do you see the irony in that sentence? There were some moments where the graphics got glitched up, there were a few cases where a cutscene played out and then the game froze, it got stuck on a black screen. And then the sequel to Hollow Knight, Silksong, was announced. Do you know how hyped this was? After a long time of very little updates, there was like 5 seconds of Silksong as part of a longer broadcast and the internet went crazy. That's it, no marketing needed, this is more than enough. There's slopes in Silksong, this is why it took so long. As the release date approached, I was almost at the true ending, but can I finish it in time? I don't think I can. And done, just the night before Silksong release, well that's convenient. Before starting to play Silksong, I did like a private test stream on Hollow Knight where I ended up pretty quickly beating Radiance for the second time, so that's something. When Silksong released, pretty much all the game stores it was on crashed from the sheer demand of users wanting to get their hands on it. I was there too, of course. The guys over at Daily Silksong News were mad lads for having a video for every day for years, found out about them ahead of the release. Is it harder than Hollow Knight? Is it larger and more diverse? Are there references to the original game? Yes to all. At least starting out was straightforward, I didn't get lost like that. In the original Hollow Knight, there was a moment where I reached some mushrooms and didn't know what to do with them. Turns out you just have to hit them from above and bounce. This is a technique known as tail bounce or pogoing. How was this explained anywhere? In Silksong, you better know what down slash is, as there are platforming challenges in plenty of places, many of them requiring nail bounces. Hornet's movement is probably more versatile, she can sprint and has more options with dashing, with many down slash being impacted by what crest is in use. When I play Silksong for a while and go back to Hollow Knight, the movement feels different. In that part of the game I reached, you can see the environment is looking not good. So yeah, that's how it is gonna look like. A lot of what I said about Hollow Knight boss battles also counts for Silksong, though they sure love the double damage, huh? Maybe I do need to get good. My main suggestions for boss fights is that have patience, try to learn the boss's attacks, the cues for them, try to get a hit or a few between the attacks. Also, can we appreciate the elaborate movement and animations of the bosses? I reached the first ending, but with about 50 hours in, I'm still mid Act 3. I'm currently at Scar Singer, who is also among the hardest ones. Plenty of the bosses I had more trouble with also universally have a reputation. Of course, Sister Splinter and especially Moorwing were the first hard ones. And there's no doubt what the infamous ones are. The main problems seem to be the accompanying enemies in the arena being a hazard zone in large part, with Growl having an especially nasty runback. I feel like I've said something like this already. Both of them can be completely cheesed, by the way. For Growl, just chill in infested water. You cannot heal, but you also rarely get hit there. For the spike ball, just stand at the edge of the arena, that's easy. For Beastly, you are not locked into the arena, so move away to the edge of the room, despawning the enemies, then come back. When the fights have such unfair elements to it and can easily just be cheesed through, maybe that's not very good design. My favorite boss though has to be the clockwork dancers with the synchronized, well choreographed movements and the rather rhythmic nature of the fight. In Hollow Knight, Hornet is an important character who will put you through a challenging fight twice. She then got her own game. There, Lace is an important character who will put you through a challenging fight twice, at least in normal form. Do you know what that means? What? No, not that, I'm not implying anything. The plot of the Hollow Knight series is rather dark, huh? Both games have a land that fallen into ruin, controlled by some entity driving it to chaos, with many characters and communities having their own background. So this game seems to have plenty of faithful bugs on a very treacherous journey to a citadel, which might not be all that great of a place. Meanwhile, slick threads are used to control the populace, much like the infection in the first game. I defeated the boss of the second act and was surprised that the game actually ended there. But in order to move on, you have to do various tasks around Farloom, it appears. Would be better to make some progress before Act 3, because then the strings being pulled get filled with void, basically black magic. And that's how it ended up like this. For me, it took about 10 hours to finish Act 1, which is in Farloom like in the outside, 20 hours to reach an ending in Act 2, which is after reaching the Citadel, and another 10 hours to reach Act 3. Healing in Silksong differs from Hollow Knight. In the first game, healing was steady, one mask at a time at intervals. Now a lot of silk gets instantly depleted, and unless interrupted by an enemy, it recovers 3 masks. I'm not very sure which is better, might actually be the one in Silksong, but the big improvement is that you can heal mid-air. I didn't realize that until I accidentally did it at some point. Silksong's soundtrack didn't feel quite as memorable as Hollow Knight's, that is until I reached the Citadel. I feel like the area music stands out the most, probably for playing for a large part of the journey when you don't have to be that focused on what's going on. Good music is also played in Shellwood, Firefields and Pilewater. Pilewater, when the water is pretty bile. I have no idea what that's supposed to mean. While the style maybe is a little bit different from Hollow Knight, the graphics have improved further with more effects now. The worst area gameplay wise is definitely Beautified Ducks, just for the selection of enemies. You have a monstrosity dealing double damage, a hard to hit mosquito spitting acid, and literally Barnacle from Half-Life. There's also the infested water which prevents healing and silk use. High holes and Hunter's March and Pilewater also come to mind for hard enemies in dangerous areas. I feel like the ants can be a lot of trouble when you do take them on, but after clearing the area once, it's manageable to just go through. Then in Act 3 I had to do it over again with more gauntlets with all enemies now corrupted. While it seemed scary, it looked harder than it actually was, considering what else I've been through. One thing that's different in Silksong is that Hornet speaks, leading to more dialogue, actual dialogue, and more interactions with others. Sherma is a treasure. I get Hornet not saying a voice line for every attack, but the iconic ones were kinda missing. No, Shaw, Adido, or Gig too. However, when binding, Hornet says this, friend! Which many, including me, hear as friend, but there's something else this reminds me of. My most listened to artist recently is Goth Minister, the man behind it, Bjorn Alexander Brem. This is an excuse for me to play this song again.
We come alive, we crawl around your houses. We come alive, we live under your bed. We come alive, and then we will control you.
Yeah, I'm off now, thanks for watching.